everybody, and welcome back to the Insert Wisdom podcast, episode number 19. Wow, we're almost at 20. Tonight's episode is going to be sort of about two different topics, I guess. One just being about like how I feel weirdly optimistic tonight. I don't know what the hell's going on. And what that means for 2026, how I'm feeling about 2026, things I'm excited about. And then I also kind of wanted to do a mini reading wrap up. So talk about some of the books that I read in 2025, which has some surprising stats in my opinion, but we will get to that in the latter half of the episode. But first, I want to say thank you so much for listening to the Insert Wisdom podcast in 2025. I began this back in, was it February? It was January, February, kind of on a whim. I'd always wanted to try out podcasting. This all came about, if you remember, I have talked about this before, but this all came about because a lot of people on TikTok were telling me that they really loved my speaking voice, that it was comforting, or that they were asking, do you do voice acting, or, stuff like that. So that sort of was the beginning of this podcast. I thought, okay, well, maybe people will want to listen to me yap about various topics and what I've learned over the course of my lifetime thus far. But I really don't know what has happened to me tonight. It's very strange because I feel weirdly optimistic about the future, about 2025, or sorry, not 2026. I guess I can't believe it's about to be 2026. I mean, what the hell? When I think about how COVID was 6 years ago, I mean, it breaks my brain. But anyway, the reason this is so surprising for me is because last week I had probably one of the most difficult weeks I've had in a long time. I cried a lot. There were a lot of difficult circumstances that came up that I just didn't know the implication of them or how life could unfold. I tend to spiral sometimes, and I get into the worst case scenarios of like, well, if this happens, then that means that's going to happen or whatever. And so today was sort of the first day that I got out of my house and I went for a walk. I think I walked like 4 miles today. And I just allowed myself to enjoy that. And I guess something in that, or making some content for TikTok, which is what I then came home and did, really triggered something in my brain to just make me feel so happy and fulfilled and excited for the coming year. And again, there's no real reason for why I'm excited. I know that there will be ups and downs. That's kind of the nature of life, like I said, last week, I was crying all the time and feeling really hopeless about a lot of things. And then tonight, all of a sudden, it's like, oh, I feel so much better. But yeah, I guess that's just the cyclical nature of things. But I think the thing that I'm most excited about in 2026 is just getting to create more, whether that's on Substack, on this podcast, Threads posts, TikTok posts, whatever it is. I'm just excited to be able to be in this crazy cosmic soup that we all live in together and get to have conversations. I feel like, a lot of times people encounter this kind of optimism and they go, why? Why are you optimistic? I mean, look at the fucking world right now. And the only thing I can say to that is there will always be bad times. There will always be difficult things that are going on in the world. okay? Like, that's not going to change. Human beings are flawed. We get angry. We start meaningless wars. We have horrible people running this country, you know, whatever it is. That ain't gonna change. But we so often, I feel like, look outside of ourselves to have reasons to feel hopeful or excited or whatever, you know? And it's really quite the opposite. If we are saying that the outside world is always crazy, there's always going to be bad news or whatever, therefore we can't allow the outside world to dictate how we experience our inner world. We can't allow that to affect the inner peace and happiness that we can give to ourselves. It is a choice. I'm also not intimating that this means that you'll feel like sunshine and rainbows all the time. I mean, clearly not. Like I said last week, I really did not feel good. But tonight I do, you know? Life constantly changes like that. But I feel like part of the reason I'm even talking about this at all is because I ended up posting about the fact that I feel weirdly optimistic tonight on Threads. I said, I don't know why I feel so optimistic tonight, but I do. Everything's going to be all right. Excited for 2026. And then somebody commented, and that's perfectly fine, because disaster doesn't care how you feel before it comes. Like, why, dude? Is there some reason that you had to comment that? I mean, sometimes it just seems that when certain people do feel happy despite everything else, you'll always get somebody who has to chime in and say, well, what about this fucking war that's happening? Are you happy about that? Like, don't you see how terrible the outside world is? It's like, yeah, I do. Acutely. But I'm choosing to be happy anyway. And I don't know, I'm not trying to make this into some hallmark whatever, but I think I'm just so enthralled with the fact that I do feel optimistic tonight and excited. Part of it, I think, has been just scrolling on Substack and seeing all of the amazing ideas that are just floating around, or quotes or whatever, and realizing that the natural order of the universe is abundant. It's not lack, it's abundance. There can be a single word that I can come across sometimes, and all of a sudden I get an idea for an article or a scene in a book that I'm writing or something, and I immediately just want to talk about it. I want to make content about it because I love ideas. I love creativity. I love self-expression. So I guess what I'm trying to say also is I hope that people do understand that life is crazy, but it's not what happens to you. It's not the outside world that matters. It's what you give to yourself internally. It's what you decide to pay attention to. And I recently kind of got really into numerology because I had a conversation with somebody who really read my numbers, I don't know what else to call them, really accurately in a way that made me feel like, oh wow, that's really accurate. So I've been doing some light studying into it, and 2025 was a 9 year, which signifies culmination. So things that have come to a head and now they are dissolving or they're ending. It's very much a year about endings. Things are becoming resolved. It's time to turn the page, start a new chapter, etc. 2026 is a 1 number year. So this is all about new beginnings. New excitements, etc. And maybe I'm just subtly picking up on that. I don't know. But I'm excited to see what happens. And as a side note, you know, these kinds of systems that I love to talk about, human design or numerology, astrology, whatever, I think it's always unfortunate when people laugh at these systems because human beings have always wanted to know why we're here, right? Or we've wanted tools to help us make our lives easier. Whether that's a literal tool like, I don't know, having a fucking KitchenAid blender or something, or runestones, or something that makes us feel like we're in communication with something that's bigger than us. So I think it's fun. I think it's enormously fun. Hopefully you think it's fun too, because I definitely see myself talking more about these kinds of things in 2026. So, moving into my books of 2025, I was very surprised with my reading year. Not in a good way or a bad way, but I read like a lot less in 2025. 2024 has still been my best reading year in terms of numbers. I read 75 books in 2024, and in 2025 I read 35. So that's basically half what I read last year. But the only way that I can sort of give an explanation for that is I just wanted to consume a lot in 2024. I just voraciously read because I wanted more and more and more. And then this year was much more about output, being the creator myself. So writing on Substack or Threads, creating this podcast, producing music videos, writing my workbook, The Art of After, How to Turn Grief into Art. You know, it was much more about output, which is kind of in line with this Ray Bradbury quote that I found a few weeks ago that I really love. And it goes like this: fall in love and stay in love. Explode. Don't intellectualize. Get passionate about ideas. Cram your head full of images. Stay in the library. Stay off the internet and all that crap. Read the great books. Read all the great poetry. See all the great films. Fill your life with metaphors and then explode. So 2025 was definitely more about exploding than consuming. But that being said, like I said, 35 books in 2025. I read a lot more self-help, if that's what you want to call it, this year, and financial books. Like I read Make Money Fast by Lewis Howes, which was fine. The Genius Zone by Gay Hendricks. Let's see, what else? Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, The Millionaire's Fast Lane, The Big Leap. So this was very much my mindset early in the year. I wanted to gain more financial literacy because I don't know where you live in the world, but in America, they do not teach you a damn thing about financial literacy. So I wanted to become better at that. And then I also reread Eckhart Tolle's books, The Power of Now and A New Earth, which both of those are some of my favorites. I don't think I read them for the first time this year, though. I think they were rereads. I reread a lot of things in 2025, like the first two books of the ACOTAR series, which I loved so much more the second time around. There's just something about them. Like, I've said this before, that there are either stories I still think about or stories that I don't think about at all. And if for some reason a story sticks with me, that's my sign that there's something special about it. And ACOTAR is one of those series for me. I think it's just the world building and the found fantasy or the found family aspect of it. And who wouldn't want to live in a place like Valaris? I mean, I feel like I'm constantly trying to build my own inner Valaris every day. So to read about a place like that on paper was a real treat for me. I also read E Squared and E Cubed by Pam Grout, and I probably read both of those at least 3 or 4 times each because I would bring them to the gym and I would read a chapter of them while I was on the treadmill. And that was such a fun period because if you don't know, both of those books are about quantum physics and how you can apply these experiments to test if the theories work or not. It was so much fun. I could do a whole episode just on those. But so technically, I've probably read closer to like 45 books this year. So the stats are a little off, but that's okay. I also read a lot of very long books this year. So the longest I read was Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson. That is 1,232 pages. I read Labyrinth of Spirits, which is like 600 pages. Fourth Wing, which I think is also 600 something pages. So there was a lot of that. My two favorite books that are fiction that I read this year were Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab, which is also like a 500 something page book, and one that I just finished last night called Catabasis or Catabasis by R.F. Kuang. And one thing that I realized about both of those books tonight is the through line with both of them, the theme is that both books have this sort of ruthless, ambitious main female protagonist, and I feel like the main protagonist, or one of the main protagonists in Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil, was received a lot better than Alice in Catabasis. For some reason, I don't know why, but I love any time we have a female protagonist who's allowed to be flawed and just has all the desire and ambition in the world to get the life that she wants, regardless of what she has to do to get there. So, like, there's something that happens in both of these books where the main female character kind of does some shady stuff to get ahead. And I loved all of it. I feel like I rarely get to read about protagonists like that. So I would say that those two books were my favorite fiction books. Oh, I live in LA. We have a lot of meatheads in their Ferraris or whatever who love to rev down my street. Those are my two favorites that I read for the first time this year. My favorite overall book, though, was probably Frankenstein. But that was a reread, so I don't think it necessarily counts. The first time I read that was in high school, so it was really cool to reread it and fall in love with it all over again, especially with the release of Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein on Netflix, which I also really loved. I also finished up one of my favorite series of all time this year. I already briefly mentioned this book, but it's from the Cemetery of Forgotten Books series by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. It's called The Labyrinth of Spirits. It's book 4. And I also read The City of Mist, which is a much shorter book. I think it's like, 200 pages. I would probably still say Carlos Ruiz Zafón is one of my absolute favorite authors of all time. I can only hope to write like him someday. Just a masterful storyteller. Everything he writes is so rich and atmospheric. He creates great characters. But I wouldn't say either of those books were on my favorites list this year, unfortunately. Book 2, The Angel's Game, is by far my favorite in the series, but the first 3 are super solid. I absolutely recommend them. In fact, I need more people to talk to about this series because I barely know anyone who's read it other than the first one, which is very famous. It's called The Shadow of the Wind. Two other books that were kind of standouts to me too were A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed, which I read earlier this year in like March, I think. Very much enjoyed it. I'm excited for the sequel. It's kind of like a cozy fantasy type of story, slight dark academia vibe. And then Sky Daddy by Kate Folk, which is all about this woman who is in love with planes, and she believes that her fate is to marry a plane and crash in one so they can be together forever. What just very strange, all over the place reading year for sure. Calabasas was the last book I read this year. The shortest was A Mirror Mended by Alex E. Harrow, which is 128 pages. But it really seems like the genres are all over the place for me this year. Mostly it was like finance, self-help, and then fantasy, I guess. I did read one thriller that I actually really enjoyed. It was With a Vengeance by Riley Sager. I'm not usually a big thriller person, but I actually really enjoyed this one. I've heard that Riley Sager's kind of hit or miss, but this was my first Riley Sager, and I enjoyed it, so I'll have to read more of his stuff. I also read Alice in Wonderland, which was really cool. I'd never read the source material, and I needed to read it for the book that I'm currently writing to help me inform the story. I have one other book that I'm reading right now that I might finish by January 1st. I honestly don't know, but it's Great Big Beautiful Life, or affectionately called The Great BBL by Emily Henry. I'm about 100 pages in so far, and I've read a lot of Emily Henry. She's considered to be the queen of romance, but this one I really don't care about very much at all. The premise, I just don't really care. I think it's kind of boring so far, but I'll probably finish it just simply because I've read every single one of her well-known books other than People We Meet on Vacation. But she's written some of my favorite romances. Like Happy Place is one of my absolute favorite romance novels. I also really enjoyed Funny Story. But yeah, I might try to finish that. I also had The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab, The Last Session by Julia Bartz, The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, and The Red Book by Carl Jung, but I'm definitely not finishing all of those by January 1st. I mean, as I'm recording this right now, it is December 29th, so like that's definitely not happening. But those are basically my reading stats for this year. It seemed like more of a time that I wanted to not take risks as much with my reading and revert back to books that I already knew that I loved, so I could marinate in those worlds, in those feelings, and create from that place instead of taking in more content. But I would love to know about the books that you've enjoyed this year, your favorites, your least favorites. Oh yeah, I guess I should say I did read one book this year that I didn't really like very much. It's by Charlotte McConaughey. Okay, we have a fire engine coming by. 1 second. This author clearly is a fantastic writer. She has other books that I want to read, but this one in particular just really wasn't for me. It pissed me off. It's called Wild Dark Shore, which is crazy because I know that this book is so many people's favorites on Book Talk and BookTube, saying that it made them cry and the family was so, they felt so bad for them, they related to them, whatever. And the premise sounds really cool. It's all about this family that lives on an Arctic island, and they have to take care of these rare seeds, and this woman washes up on shore one day, and it's all about that. And I don't know, it just wasn't for me. I do still think about it though, which, as I said earlier, there are only stories I still think about and ones that I don't. So that has to imply that it has something going for it, but it just wasn't for me. But I absolutely encourage you to check it out because the story was very interesting. But with that being said, again, I'm so excited to see what 2026 has in store, what content I make, what books I read, the conversations I get to have with this growing audience that I'm building. I think it's going to be a good year. I'm optimistic. I hope you feel it too. As always, you can reach out to me at insertwisdom@gmail.com if you have any questions or comments or stories you would like to share with me to become future episodes. You can, of course, remain anonymous if that's what you would prefer. You can find all of my work in the show notes. I write posts on Substack and Threads. I create content on TikTok and YouTube. I'm all over the place. I have 2 books. One is a contemporary romance called Under the Same Sky. It's available on Amazon. And I have a workbook called The Art of After, How to Turn Grief into Art. So with that, this might be my last episode for 2025. That's crazy. I just realized that. So yeah, I just have to say I'm so grateful for all of you for listening to me yap and ramble on this podcast. I hope that you find it interesting or at least valuable in some way. And let's do this, guys. Let's take on 2026. It's going to be a great, great year. So, thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you guys in the next episode. Goodbye.